everyone, how's it going? It's me here again, and this video is going to be talking about the Phantom Menace, Episode 1 of Star Wars. Now, this movie is my least favorite, like a lot of other people. I don't like a lot of things about it. There's some things that I do like, but overall I think I'd give it like a low C if I was to rank it. Which I don't really rank, I just do that to get across the idea of how I think of the movie. But overall, I thought the movie had somewhat decent pacing. I thought the story-wise the movie was good, it's just the script and everything about it was bad. It's like I said, it's the first movie in the trilogy. It was part of the prequel trilogy, which is supposed to be more about Anakin. And this movie takes place at a time of peace. It's when the Sith come back after, I think, 200 years, if I remember correctly. It's been a while, and the Jedi pretty much think they're gone. And it starts off with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon trying to negotiate peace treaties with the Trade Federation, who are wanting to break off from them. Now, it's not really for a while in the movie until the Sith actually come back, and it's just something about this movie I don't really... Jar Jar was one of the most hated things about this movie. I do not like him. This movie was more kiddish, which I don't mind the movie being somewhat more family-friendly oriented. I don't know how to trace this, but it's supposed to be a time of peace, and I don't mind that when it's more peace, not much really going on. It's build-up, which it kind of does with Episode 4. That's what this did, just there's much about this movie that was not liked. Like I said, it's Jar Jar. The movie was more kiddish, and the script was bad. I liked some of the actors in it. Like, I enjoyed Ewan McGregor. I liked Liam Neeson in this movie. I like Qui-Gon Jinn. I mean, Qui-Gon Jinn's an important Jedi for the most part, and he actually has an interesting backstory. It's just this movie, a lot of people didn't like him because he was in this movie and so forth. Natalie Portman wasn't too bad in this movie, but this movie really relied on CGI, which at this time, I get CGI wasn't really that good, so the movie really hurt from that, and I think this movie was having to hold up to a lot of standards to other movies. I think if it was any other time, and if it wasn't the fact of 4, 5, and 6 before that, I think this movie probably would have held up a little bit better. People are like, oh, a sci-fi movie, but this movie had a lot to hold up to when it came to 4, 5, and 6, and being made after, and being more telling the story of, like, how the Jedi fell up to the events of Episode 4, but this movie, as I said, takes place in a time of peace. It's a prequel trilogy. It takes place before 4, 5, and 6. It's supposed to explain more about Anakin, how they come across him. At this point, Anakin's more of just a slave in this movie, and I really didn't care much for the kid in this. He wasn't bad, by no means. He didn't really... A lot of this was not his fault. He just happened to be in this movie. But it explains how he is a slave before this. His mother's there, and at this point, Qui-Gon and them find him on Tatooine after escaping Naboo after the Trade Federation took over, because there's some whole peace treaty going on with that they want Queen Amidala to sign, but they get Queen Amidala off the planet, and they end up landing on Tatooine because for some reason the hyperdrive has pretty much gone out. It got shot because there was a space battle when they were escaping, and they end up coming across Anakin here, who's, as I said, is a slave. Him and his mother are, and Qui-Gon ends up finding out that this kid I'm just going to say really strong with the Force, because I didn't really care much for the midichlorian thing in this movie. I thought it kind of took away from the mystery of what the Force actually is. And so, he ends up asking, like, who Anakin's father was, and it turns out that Anakin had no father. He was born from the Force, and if you know some backstory, Darth Plagueis was... he's kind of experimenting with the Force. He's trying to control it to his will, and the Force didn't like that, so they wanted to bring balance. They wanted to find a way to stop this from happening. So the midichlorians, technically, or the Force, ended up basically impregnating Shmi Skywalker, and that's pretty much how Anakin was born. And yes, as you've probably told, Anakin basically is Jesus of Star Wars. That's pretty much what it was, because I mean, that explains why he's so strong with the Force. He basically, in a way, I guess you could say, is somewhat the Force. And so he ends up wanting to take Anakin with him, and he ends up betting in a pod race, which in the end Anakin wins, because in simple terms, Anakin kind of sees some of the future, which explains why he has such good reflexes. In general, he is just a good pilot, but because of that, it ends up helping him. So they end up escaping not before they get attacked by Sith, which is technically Darth Maul, and this is pretty much when the Sith kind of make their appearance. The Jedi Council doesn't believe it, and one thing about that I noticed in this movie is the Jedi Council are just extreme dicks, I guess you could say. They are rude. I mean, they don't really believe anything that's being said, which I guess is how it is after so long of being in peace. So, they don't believe it, and at this point they're kind of also having some issue political-wise in the Republic. They want Chancellor Valor out, pretty much, so Palpatine, who technically is Darth Sidious in this is kind of where his plan starts coming together. He's already basically in the Republic. That was the whole thing of the plan set by the Sith, was to invade the Republic and destroy him from the inside, and this is how he starts doing it, by becoming Chancellor. So he ends up going up in ranks after the Hero Chancellor Valor, and so Queen Amidala, who technically isn't necessarily Queen, Padme actually is, but she's pretending to be a bodyguard, so it's kind of the one that's pretending to be Amidala's the body double, and they end up having to go back to Naboo because they want to save, Amidala wants to save her people, and so they end up getting the help of the Gungans, and the Gungans I just don't like. I mean, earlier in the movie, they kind of show the Gungans, they show their city and everything, and it's just, I don't know. The Gungans, I don't mind them being in Star Wars, but they're just really heavily relied on, kind of like the Ewoks in Episode 6, but I just like the Ewoks slightly more than the Gungans. The Gungans, I don't know, I just don't like. They get the help of the Gungans to take back the city, and so there's like this war going on out in the plains between the droid and the droids and the Gungans, while the Qui-Gon and them invade into the city of Naboo. And so while this war's going on out there, they're invading, and it somewhat starts out easy for the Gungans, but it starts just slowly going downhill for there. And on the inside in Naboo, they're invading, and they're kind of getting pinned down here and there, and Anakin goes and hides in one of like these little Naboo fighters, which at the time I thought were cool, but now I just kind of hate them. I don't really know why. They're not even really seen that much besides on Naboo, and even then they kind of just disappear. But Anakin hides in there, and they end up getting rid of most of the droids in there, and they end up coming across Darth Maul again, who is the Sith that Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon fought on Tatooine when they were escaping after getting Anakin off of there. And so him and Obi-Wan end up fighting Darth Maul, and pretty much the rest of them end up going their own way to try to get up to the leaders to try to discuss more about the treaty, which I'm pretty sure was more of just a one-sided debate. And then there's the Battle of the Plains going on out in the, plains of Naboo, and it's not going well for the Gungans. They end up heavily getting beat, and this part of the movie I didn't really mind, because this is where the real fighting starts between Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Darth Maul. It's 2 versus 1, really. And I liked the fight. The fight was really good. I actually enjoyed it. I thought Darth Maul was a great character. I mean, he was the first Jedi, or Sith Jedi, whatever you want to say, that was like doing all the flips, which I think is how most Jedi should fight, but it's more somewhat, I guess you could say, one-sided. It's more Darth Maul. Qui-Gon's able to hold out, but Obi-Wan doesn't fare too well. I mean, he ends up getting beat here and there. I mean, he gets kicked off an edge onto like a lower platform. Qui-Gon is kind of the only one that can really take them, but it ends up coming down to Qui-Gon ends up getting killed halfway through the fight, and Obi-Wan has to fight him while there's this little battle going on in the sky, or in space, you could say. And I really question how, because to me it really did not look like there was that many Naboo fighters that went into space. Maybe like 5 or 6, and then there's Anakin, of course, going against like this giant navy up there. I'm just like, I think they would all get destroyed. How did they all like survive this? And Anakin ends up like flying inside the ship and blowing it up from the inside, which is kind of talked about later in the Clone Wars TV show, like 2009 one. And so, because of that, because that worked out so well, Anakin's able to get in there and blow it up and escape, because, you know, a kid can do that. He's, like, really great at piloting and is able to go in there and take out a giant Trade Federation ship. And because of that, it ends up helping the Gungans, who at this time were pretty much beaten. It ends up deactivating all of the droids there. And so, because of that, they pretty much won the battle going on in the plains. They were victorious in the space battle, and they pretty much become victorious because with Padme and all of her troops that were going inside to talk about the peace treaty. And then, of course, there's the little Jedi battle going on between Darth Maul and Obi-Wan. And it was kind of an interesting fight, really, because Obi-Wan, for the most part, I mean, is mostly out of rage, was taking on Darth Maul fairly easily, and he ends up somewhat getting beat. He's like, gets kicked, or he actually gets force pushed down into this giant pit, which is similar to how Palpatine in Episode 6 happened, but he's there, and for the most part, Darth Maul was overconfident. He got cocky, because he's like, oh, I just took out, like, every Jedi here, which was really only 2. But because of that, Obi-Wan was able to get the upper hand. He ends up doing, like, a jump, and then flips over Darth Maul, and uses the Force to grab his Master's lightsaber, and ends up, like, splitting Darth Maul in 2. And so, that was pretty much the end of Darth Maul, which was a somewhat... It was a really good fight. I actually really enjoyed it. It's probably my favorite part of this movie. It's probably one of the only memorable things of this movie. I guess technically the two fights. I mean, the pod racing wasn't too bad, but I watched a video of someone discussing the pod race, which I'll discuss here in a minute, but after Obi-Wan ends up defeating Darth Maul, they're pretty much overall victorious on Naboo. It kind of comes down, I mean, there's a tree between, like, the Gungans and all of them, and it was like a giant celebration similar to like the end of episode 6 where it showed all those celebrations on the other city, but they end up celebrating and pretty much they mention that they're going to look into, the Jedi Council at least does, look into the Sith because, you know, no one believed him until after Qui-Gon's dead, after that all happened. So they mention like how there's always two Sith, there's a Master and an Apprentice, and how they're going to investigate this, and at this point, because Qui-Gon, after his like dying words to Obi-Wan, were to train the boy, because he's the chosen one, Obi-Wan reluctantly doesn't really want to, but ends up saying yes, he will go and train Anakin. And Yoda was kind of upset about this, but the council agreed with the idea of Obi-Wan training the boy, so they allowed Obi-Wan to become the master. And at this point, Obi-Wan was most likely to become a Jedi Knight. So that's pretty much how the movie ends, and it wasn't it's hard to say, really. There are aspects of this movie I liked. I thought the story-wise it wasn't bad. You know, there was a build-up to the end, you know. There was a time of peace, obviously. That's understandable because it was 200 years since the Sith were last seen. And I liked Darth Maul. Like I said, I liked some of the actors. I liked Ian McGregor, Liam Neeson. I liked Natalie Portman. I liked the characters. Just the script overall was just awful. The CGI I can understand. I mean, it was at that time when CGI wasn't that great. Granted, there was Jurassic Park, but that's like one of the few exceptions. That movie still holds up today with its CGI, but it was somewhat robotics. But this movie was just like it like depended on CGI, which I can understand for some things, but there's some things that I think should be done practical. Now, granted, like the whole entire Gungan army, the whole entire droid army, that a lot of that needed to be CGI, understandably. But like Darth Maul, I mean, his flips were real most. I mean, there were some things with it that were some CGI and somewhat he couldn't do himself, but like some of the flips and stuff were him because he could actually do that. But another thing is the movie was just, I think, too childish for me. It wasn't as good as what I thought it could be. I mean, I understand it being, you know, not as dark as, say, like, what Revenge of the Sith is or what Attack of the Clones is, because, like I said, it's a time of peace, and the Sith have just returned, but I think it just held too much. It was too much of a kid's movie, and I understand that's what he wanted, but I don't think that's what a lot of people wanted. I think they expected too much more. Now, I remember at the time when the movie came out, everyone loved it, and then overall, they somehow grew to hate the movie, and certain aspects I can understand about it, but like the Jar Jar Binks was just way too annoying. I don't mind that he was in the movie, more so that he was like a central character in the movie for whatever reason. I think he was there to be kind of like that Chewbacca of this movie, just too much more stupid and much more kiddish, but I digress and I go too far into why I hate Jar Jar, but those are the things I hate about it. Like I said, I already said what I liked about it. I liked some of the characters in the script. That was great. It's just, it does not hold up. Like I said, I put it at like I think a low C, and I think what keeps at that low C is some of the actors I really enjoyed, and some aspects of it that could have been good I liked about it, but there's just too much that I did not like about this movie, and that really hurts this movie for me, and that's why it's my least favorite movie, but that's just me. If you like the movie, tell me why. If you didn't, tell me why. It doesn't really matter. You can hate it, you can like it, it's whatever. If you like the prequel trilogy, you like the prequel trilogy. If you don't, you don't. If you like the original trilogy, you do. If you don't, you don't. It's whatever. But leave your comments down below, and I will see you guys next time.